Hello, good morning, good afternoon. I hope you're all well. Weather-wise, it's dark and miserable again today. It was a gorgeous sunny spring day yesterday, and the weather has completely changed. So I hope where you are, the sun is shining. Talking of nature and the weather, today we're going to be doing a little tree of life tutorial for a cabochon. Now, I've done tree alives before in a frame, and I've done tutorials on that with Totally Beads, but we haven't done one on a cabochon. Now, a cabochon is a stone with a flat back, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And this design you can put on any shape or size cabochon. So I'll show you a few that I've done previously, which I've done quite a long time ago, which is sitting in my little stash of stuff. And I will take you over to the website and you can choose your wire. And we've got a big range of cabochons that you can choose from as well. But any stone, essentially, any gemstone that you've got will work with this design. It might take me a little while, so I have tried to do a few preparation steps in advance. If I'm going quick, because I want to make sure that we can fit this all in within the hour, then please give us a nudge, ask me any questions that you've got. I'm going to say a very quick hello to you all before I take you over to show you the goodies, but don't forget to ask any questions and I will do my absolute best to answer them for you. So good morning to Rachel, who's in an overcast Barrow. Good morning to Sharon. Hello to Lisa. Good morning to Jan. She says it's miserable and rainy in Sudbury. I'm hoping it doesn't rain, but I think it will. I'm hoping it doesn't rain because I've sent my little one in a pair of summer shorts, his school shorts, and his school sunny cap. And yeah, he's got a winter coat as well. So I didn't know what to put him in this morning. Hopefully the rain stays off. Good morning to Camille. How are you doing? I'm good, thank you very much. Good morning to Kath. Hello to Barbara. Hello to Yolanda. She says it's 5:01 in the morning here in Michigan. The link apparently isn't working on YouTube, so I apologise for that, Jan. I'll send you over to the website and you can have a little look that way. And good morning to Mel, who's in Australia. So good evening to you. How are you doing? Good morning to Joy as well. She says, good morning, Natalie. Can it be done on any shape stone? Yes, it absolutely can. And I'll show you on my mat all the different types of stones, or some of the ones, because obviously I don't have them all here with me. But I'll talk through with you the different wires and stuff you can use, the different shapes you can use, how to measure out your wire for anything that you're doing, any shape that you've got and any size that you've got. Hello to Carol and good morning to Judith. Right, I'll take you over to the website now. We are totallybeads.co.uk and we are a UK-based company, but we ship worldwide. So if you need to change currency, you can do there. If you want to get your hands on some goodies so you can make along with me today is the Tree of Life cabochon pendant right here at the top. I think it's a poppy jasper that I've used for this one. Now you can choose whichever wires you want to use. We are using a soft copper wire and they are colour coded. So you've got two gauges of wire in this little pack. I'm using a 0.8 millimeter, which is 20 gauge for those who use that system. And that's what we're going to be basically creating the frame that you don't see, which is on the back, and the bail, and the 0.4, which is 26 gauge wire, the 0.4 millimeter, 26 gauge, that's what we're going to be creating our tree with. So we create the roots, the trunk, the branches. If you've got any gemstone chips, you can add them onto them as well if you want to, or any little beads. And we basically use that 0.4 or 26 gauge wire to secure the cabochon in place and create that lovely decorative tree at the front. So for £3.15, you're going to get 2 gauges of your wire, and there'll be enough in there, I'd imagine, to make 2 pendants, 2 Tree of Life pendants. Obviously, how much wire you're going to use will determine on how many branches and how thick you want your tree to be, and also the size of the stone that you're using. But you can choose from gold, light gold, rose gold or silver here. So you can use any of those colours. They are dead soft copper, which is lovely to work with, and they are colour plated. It does keep its colour really nicely. It's kind of like an anti-tarnish colour, which means you can't patina this if it is something that you would like to do. But what it does mean is you can hammer it lightly as well. So if you wanted to hammer the frame at the back to kind of firm it up, you can do that. I'm sorry there's no pictures of it, but it is wire. These are the goods. So we've got lots of beautiful gemstone oval cabochons for you to choose from. All of the ones that we've selected for you here are 40mm in size, which is what I'm going to be demoing with for you today. Of course, if you have a slightly different size, you can use that as well. But we have got a really good choice here, and they do very much vary in price depending on what it is that you're after. So I'm not going to talk to you about the properties and metaphysical properties of these stones, because we really would be here all day. But you can have a little scroll through just some of the selection that we've got. So we've got an African Amazonite, we've got amethyst, we've got a beautiful dark rose quartz, we've got Indian agate. So you can see the Indian agate is only £4.41. There's been a discount on all of these for you today. But if you're wanting something maybe, you know, a little bit more expensive, then we do have a very varied range of prices. We've got a dyed lapis, we've got a manganese, a mahogany obsidian, we've got all sorts of lovely picture jaspers, red jaspers. I think that yellow tiger eye is particularly gorgeous. We've got yellow jade, strawberry quartz, red tiger eye, which is absolutely stunning. So have a little look and see what you think, and then you can choose the wire to put with that. I've not decided that we're going to have this as a kit, so this stone with this wire. It's entirely up to you what you think looks nice. I tend to be drawn to more kind of earthy colours when I'm making a tree of life. So something like that picture jasper, or maybe the red tiger eye or the yellow tiger eye would be something that I think looks particularly beautiful. But I am going to use a lapis today, and I'm going to use a gold coloured, a light gold coloured wire with it, because in your lapis it's got little bits of pyrite in, so like gold little flecks. So that's what I'm going to use to demo, because it was just what I had available in my stash. But have a little look for something like this one. You know, I think if that's, it looks like a kind of clear quartz, that one to me. You might want to put silver with it. I think the manganese would look beautiful with silver. I usually put blues with silvers, but when I'm looking at something like a turquoise, I think a turquoise looks beautiful with copper. Obviously it's mined in the same place, so I think nature kind of puts those colours together. And although I always say I put blues and silvers together, I think the lapis particularly looks lovely with the gold, as I say, because of those little golden flakes of pyrite. So lots of beautiful colours to choose from, and I think something to suit all budgets. So have a little look on the Totally Beads website if you'd like to buy a kit today, and then I'll take you down on the mat and I'll show you some of the samples that I've got. Good morning to Carol and Judith. Camille said, I did have a go of this on tiger eye stone and it came out lovely. I hope I'm not frozen. My computer's been on an awful while. I'm hoping things don't heat up too much. And good morning to Hannah. Okay, let me take you down on the mat, because we have got quite a little bit to get going with. So wires today, I'm using a 0.8 soft copper wire, which is colour coded, this one being a gold colour, and that is 20 gauge. I'm also going to be using this beautiful, again, copper wire, a light gold colour on this. This is a 0.4 millimetres, which is a 26 gauge wire. And in terms of size, well, we'll discuss that as we go. So as you can see here, these are some that I made a long time ago. This is a labradorite. I've only got a very thin tree on this one. I've done a bit of coiling and everything else, but you can see that I've got a lovely kind of teardrop oval shape on this one. I like using lab because it gives those lovely kind of flashes or labradorescence in the back. And I think, you know, if I show you this one, where you can see the colour flashes here, all I've done is I've created that kind of bare tree, but I've placed my stone this way round, so it looks like the flash is picking up the leaves, or representing the leaves. So if you have got a flashy stone like a moonstone or a labradorite or something which has got that kind of schiller effect in it, have a little look when you're placing your cabochon into your pendant, which way round you want that to catch the light. Again, if you've got a particular patination on your gemstone, you might want to show that off. So have a little think about your placement. So these were some that we did a while ago. This one particularly is just one of mine. You can see it's in a much larger frame than the ones we've done before. I added a little garnet swing onto this, but you could use these as like sun catchers or like window hanging ornaments. It is freezing a little bit, and you can see this way has just been done using the chips which we've done before. This time around we're going to be using a cabochon, and you can do lots of different things with your bail. This is a bit of gallery wire, so I've used the gallery wire there to form the bail, but here you'll see I've done kind of a figure of 8 corset type weave, which is like so. And today I'm just going to do a 2-wire weave. So the way we create this is we're going to make a little frame which will be slightly smaller than our cabochon. So what I like to do, if I can move these out of the way, I like to get my 0.8 wire and I will straighten it out a little bit. Just going to get rid of this end. So when I'm straightening it out, thank you very much, Mel. She says they're all lovely. Good morning to DIY Dream Weddings, and thank you, Camille, as well. So I'm just going to straighten out my wire. I tend to straighten my wire out on the reel because it gives me a little bit of, it makes it taut, so it makes it nice and easy to shape. I usually cut for a stone of this size, which, as I say, we're using 40 millimeters here today. I usually tend to use, this one's a little bit thinner than the one that I've made for the prototype. I usually use about 30 centimeters of that, which is 12 inches, but I do tend to use more than I actually need. And you can add more decoration to the bail using those that extra length of wire. But what I want to do, if I just cut a little bit off for now, is I like to shape around my stone. So I'm going to kind of take the ends up together and get that curve. And what I want is enough wire which is going to fill around my stone. It's not going to go on the outside. It's going to be slightly smaller. And then it's going to be enough to kind of pinch up and to make a bail. Now my bail is going to be formed by these 2 wires here at the top running parallel vertically upwards. So I want the length to be twice the length of the bail when I come to weave, because as you see it's going to go up and over and secure at the back. So when I'm placing my my wire on, I want to make sure that, if you can see here, it's just slightly smaller than the stone or the cabochon I'm using. So you won't see that from the front. It's going to just go around the back. Rowan says, wow, these are beautiful. I followed the link, but it goes to a different project. I apologise for that. If you go on totallybeads.co.uk, you'll be able to go into the Learn to Make Jewellery section or our video tutorials, and it's just called Tree of Life Pendant today. And that's where you can buy all your stones and your wire. So it's going to be slightly smaller, and then I'm going to have enough to play with in terms of creating that bail. Now also when it comes to creating the tree at the front, when I'm trying to decide on the length of my wire, my rule of thumb is whatever gemstone or cabochon you're using, you want 3 times the length. So I'd want that to be at least 3 times, because not only are we going to need that extra to secure onto the stone so to wrap around the frame at the back and to create the roots and the trunk and all these lovely branches. But what I tend to do is I double it over, so for every length of wire I use, I'm creating 2 branches. So for me, for a stone of this size, I'm going to use about 20 centimetres of the 0.4, and I'm going to cut about 15 lengths of that. But if you want it to be more full, then you just cut extra. I'll show you again with these to show you the difference. I like to have quite a full tree, so I like my trunk to be quite thick, and then it allows me to play with all of those branches. The less wire you have, the thinner that tree looks, and it's entirely up to you what you like the look of. So to cut my lengths, as I say, I want to use about 3 times the length of my stone. So I tend to just lay out the first one very roughly, rather have more than I'd rather have less. So here, if that's a generous 3 times my stone, it's about 15 centimetres, but I'm going to cut that extra, so I'll probably cut it this one about 20 centimetres. So just make sure you've got plenty. Of course, you can trim it off and cut it shorter, but you can't add it on once it's cut. So I'm going to start to take my, my 0.4 wire, and then what I would do is I would just lay it out again next to my reel. Doesn't have to be perfectly precise, but I would cut about 15 of these personally. So that's going to create 30 branches, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to double it over. So to double it over, I'm just going to take my little pile of however many I've cut, and then I bring the ends up together, and I'm going to put a little bend in the middle here. Now, you can wrap these on and secure them onto your frame before you create the shape with the 0.8 or 20 gauge wire, or you can create your frame first and then wrap them on. It's entirely up to you. When it comes to wrapping them on, all I'm going to do is I'm going to place that in the middle. So I've essentially got 2 wires, even though it's 1 length of wire. Where that middle point is, I'm then just going to wrap around the bottom with a couple of wraps. So I'm keeping it quite tight, and I'm just going to bring that round. And in terms of tools, all I really need is my my cutters and my pliers. So I'm using Joron base pliers. I've got some needle nose. I've also got some bent nose, which I quite like. So they're kind of like tweezers, are very fine tip ones, but any chain nose you've got will do. So I'm just wrapping that on. So you can see I've wrapped it round about twice, making that little coil, and then I'll pinch it in with my fingers or with my pliers. So to create that shape, I'll take it off just to show you for now. If you want to, you can hammer this. So when you're happy with the shape that you've got, you don't have to, but I sometimes think when I'm using a soft wire, I might just want to firm that up a little bit. So if you want to do that, then a little, I have a little hammering block and a little hammer, like a little toffee hammer. So I'm going to start forming my bail now, then I'll hammer just this section here, obviously not on my stone, but just making sure I keep lining it up with my stone to keep making sure that I've got, you know, a good size. As I say, it needs to be maybe a few millimeters in. Good morning to Zakia, how are you doing, who's in Michigan? So to form my bail, I'm also going to take the same 0.4 26 gauge wire. I apologise if I'm skipping steps. I'm not. There's just lots of different ways and orders you can make this. It's hard to gauge how much of the 0.4 wire I want for my bail, because it does depend on the size you want to use. Let's move that out of the way so I get a bit of focus. I probably would say I've got about 60 centimetres of the 0.426 gauge. But again, I like to leave it personally on my reel. I find it's easier to work with that way. So when I've lined my 0.8 wire up and I've got that kind of oval shape, I'm bending it around, so I've got that circle, and I'm making those little points at the top, so it's going to run off the top. That's going to start forming my bail. I'm going to take my weaving wire and I'm going to leave myself a little tail end. I'll use that a little bit later on, and if I don't, I can just cut it off. So I'm placing it over the wires where they come together, and I'm just going to bring it through the middle, and I'm going to refer to this as the bottom wire, and I'm just going to wrap that on 3 times to secure. So just bringing it over, pushing it down with my fingers and just pinching together to create those little wraps, which will start just at the point where these 2 little wires meet. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it around the back, and I want these wires to sit nice and close together, running straight and parallel, so you can straighten that with your fingers. And I'm going to bring the wire from the back, so over wire number 1, and back into the middle, which is just going to wrap the top wire just once. And then I'm bringing it over both of them to wrap the 2. Back into the middle and just wrapping over the bottom one. Bringing up and over the top one, so back through the middle to just wrap once over that top wire. And then every now and again with my pliers, I'm just going to compress that weave down so it starts to look nice and neat. I'm hoping you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm bringing the wire over to wrap over both wires, up into the middle to just wrap over the bottom wire, back up and over back through the middle to wrap over the top wire. Again, press the wires down just very gently and then over both. Now you can do any 2-wire weave that you want to with this. This is the one I'm doing right now. You can see here on this one, I have wrapped 2 wraps around the bottom, 2 over both. 2 on the bottom, 2 over both. So any 2-wire weave that you feel comfortable with, you can do that. If you want to splay these wires out into a V shape, you can do a figure of 8 or corset weave. And how that's achieved is by wrapping over one, bringing it through to wrap over the other, and just creating that figure of 8 motion. I taper my wires out, and then when I have the length of the bail, I taper them back in, and then that creates this kind of triangle type effect. Today I'm just going to do a 2-wire weave, but as you can see, anything that you want to do, you can do. So just to reiterate how this one's going, I'm going to wrap the wire over both wires 1 and 2, top and bottom, keeping them close together and quite parallel. If it's easy for you, you can splay the wires out just at the end, and that will allow me to get my weaving wire in and out with ease. So it's over both, in the middle to wrap over just the bottom wire, all the way to the top to wrap just the top wire, back through the middle. Again, all I'm doing here is just pressing it down ever so gently, just to keep that nice and neat, and then over them both again. So you get into a nice repetition with it. This will kind of change out of shape a little bit. Don't worry, I'm not holding it with too much pressure. I'm just using this bit, like the neck where it comes together, to place between my finger and my thumb. so I can create that repetition of that weave. So over the bottom, up, over the top, and over both. Now, I'm not fighting with the wires, I'm not pulling on the wire. What you'll notice I'm doing is I'm just using my finger or my fingernail to bring it up, and you can see I'm just pushing it gently into position. So I'm kind of, that wire's got a bit of a kind of memory to it. It's all about placing it, not pulling on it like you would like a string or something or a thread. That tension is all created by just bending it. So I'm positioning it where I want it. I want it to lay there, and then I can take it into the middle, give it a little push with my finger. I don't want these wraps to overlap each other. It's freezing a little bit. You can see how I'm creating this, hopefully. Those wraps aren't wrapping over each other, they're just sitting next to each other. And very gently, I'm not putting much pressure on these wires, I'm just knocking it slightly down to compress it to create that neat weave. So over the top to wrap both, in the middle, gently laying it with my finger where I want it to be. The slower you go, the neater you will find it. The one that I've got isn't that neat because I was just trying to make sure I had enough to show you how this was going to be before the demonstration. So I did do a very quick one. But you can see if I'm pulling on this, the more I pull on this wire, the more that's going to pull this wire outwards. And I quite like these wires running quite close together. So I'm just gently laying it where I want it to be. So once over the top, once over them both, over the bottom, over the top, and over them both. So any 2-wire weave that you want to achieve. Now, as I say, if you are wanting to add a little bit more structure to this part, lay it back onto your cabochon and just check you're happy with the shape of that. And you can do this. I find it easy to do after I've kind of woven a little bit, really, just to hold it in place. But then I'm not going to hammer any of this weave. I'm just very gently going to tap. Now, this is not a necessity. You don't have to do this. But I do find by just adding little taps on my little block is going to add a little bit more firmness. It's going to harden that wire a little bit. So that might be something that you might want to do if you've got that to hand. You can see I'm not putting a lot of pressure on that. It will slightly dent the wire. I quite like that look, to be honest, and it will just be on the back. But if you have got a coated wire, do be cautious, because our wire with Totally Beads is great, but obviously if you are using something like a silver plated wire, it's usually a very thin plate covering of the of that colour, that silver, on top of your core wire, which is usually your copper. In regards to wire, I love working with copper. I adore copper. Copper wire, whether it's colour plated or bare like this, for me, it has lots of properties. It is said to be an amplifier. So it is whatever if you believe in the properties of your stone, then the wire is meant to copper wire is meant to add to that and emphasize it a little bit. But just in terms of use, I find copper, one, it's a cheaper wire to use. So if you're starting out and practicing, I'd always say a soft copper. You can get all wires in different hardnesses. You can get half hard, soft, whatever. Soft for me is the easiest one to work with because it's easiest to shape. I like using silver sterling, of course, which is a little bit more expensive. and also a plated wire, or I prefer to use what we call filled. So if I'm wanting something which is kind of mid-range, a silver filled or maybe even a gold filled wire has got a much more thicker coating and a thinner core. This is lovely to use because you've got the lovely colours that you want on it. So it comes in a variety of different colours at Totally Beads. You've got a lovely rose pink today to choose from, silver, like gold I'm using here, and a gold. So use whatever you find it is best for you. Teresa says copper wire is so pretty. I just find it nice and soft and supple really. And I think when I started using sterling, after I'd been practicing on copper, it did take a little while for me to get used to it because I find it a little bit more springy. But using this is a really good way, I think, of making trees, because, as I say, it's much cheaper. You don't need an awful lot to create this lovely full effect. So once you've got your weave going, I'll take you over to one that I've got. You weave that for as long as you want. So you can see, if I can hold this up to the camera, you can see this is the weave that I've created by using that technique. So again, I'll just go over it very quickly with you. Keep gently compressing it by pushing it down. I'm going over the bottom. I've already done over the top here, so just bear with me. So I'm going to go over the bottom wire, up to the top wire, and over once, and then over them both. So I would continue that until I've got the length that I want for my bail. So my bail is going to be half of that length because I'm going to be folding it over. When I'm happy with the length that I've got, when I've created my weave, using whichever tutu weave that you want to, I'm going to finish it off by wrapping round 3 times onto that bottom wire, and that just secures my wire in place. So 3 little wraps just to finish off at the end. Now I've got quite long lengths here. If you want to, you can run them down much further down to the bottom of your stone, or you could make some curls at the back. But you can see the way I form the tree is going to ensure that my my cabochon is fully secured in there. So all I really need to do is just trim off, so I've got maybe 1 centimetre or so at the end of my weave. And then with a pair of round nose pliers, I'm just going to curl the end. So I'll splay it out a little bit into a V shape. I'm going to just get the tip of my round nose pliers and I'm going to just form a little curve. Now what I like to do when I'm forming my curve is, you can see there's a tiny little part of it which is a little bit flat. So then I just come in with my cutters and I'm just trimming off, if you can see there, a teeny tiny like millimetre of it. And then I put my pliers back in my round nose, and that will form a lovely little coil. And I want that coil to be in on itself, so it's touching itself at the top there, so it's not going to catch on anything. I've kept this wire on at the moment. You can trim that off, but I've left a tail end here at the beginning, so I can just decide which one I want to use to secure, really. Let me just have a little sip of my drink, sorry. Lukewarm coffee. Okay, so again on this side, I'm going to put my tip of my round nose pliers in, and I'm going to start to form a little curl. Just take the tiniest piece off, and continue that curl. So you can see I've got two little kind of spirals there. Now to form my bail, what I'm going to do is I like to form it with my fingers really. So I'm going to give it a gentle position up, so a slight bend, and then I'm just going to gently curve it all the way round. You can do this with a bail maker, you could use a pen, whatever you want. I'm just going to take those curls here and just put a tiny bend in, just flicking it up ever so slightly, because that will then just reach. What I want to do is I want these curls to be on the inside of the frame, and then I'm just going to keep placing my cabochon back on just to check that I'm happy with the placement of that. So when I'm happy where it is and those curls are inside the frame, as I say, you can use this tail that you started with to hook it on. I'm actually just going to use this tail end here, I think. So I'm going to trim this one off here to begin with. I'm going to cut it on the inside of the loop, and then just with my pliers I'm just pushing that down just to make sure it's there's no scratchy bits. You can also kind of compress along before you fold it down if you want with your nylon coated pliers, just to firm that up if need be. So I'm positioning it where I want it to be, and then I'm using that tail end to just secure on to the frame, so I can go through that loop. And I'll obviously be securing that bail to the frame when I add those branches on essentially too. So just a couple of wraps. Don't have to worry about this side because, as I say, I'll be firming that up in a little bit. You can also wrap it around together if you want to, but once I'm happy with that, I'm going to bring the wire back, trimming it off, and then again with my pliers just tucking it in. So again, I'm just going to lay my stone onto the front and check I'm happy with the positioning of that. And again, so at the back it will look something like this. When I'm going to add the branches on, you can see I've started to do that already. All I've done is I folded over those kind of 20 centimetres or however long you want into the middle. So I found the middle point, and then position it into my frame, and then I'm wrapping it round just to secure once or twice. So taking it through the middle. And this is why sometimes I do like to firm my frame up a little bit, because you can kind of bend this out of shape at this point. Just tucking it down and pressing it in. And I'm just going to add on all of the lengths that I want. So position it where the bend is in the wire, in the 0.4 or 26 gauge. Hold it with my thumb and finger and just gently bring it round. I do want it nice and tight around that frame, but just wrap it round once or twice. I tend to look at which is the slightly longer length. It doesn't really matter, but wrap it round a couple of times. Then what I do is I get my pliers and I'm just compressing that together and then sliding it down. And then going to give a little pinch, just gently, underneath the bottom of that frame. with my pliers. And then what you can start doing is you can start putting little bends in, which are going to be the roots. So you could take those 2 pieces of wire and just with the tip of your chain nose or tweezer nose pliers, just all I'm doing is very gently just putting some little kind of zigzags in. So giving it a little pinch. And this is going to start to form the roots. So once I've attached all of them on, I've got something that looks like this. I know it doesn't look very tree-like, and I'm just going to position those wires together, and this is probably the trickiest part really of the whole process. So I'm going to position my cab where I want it, and I'm going to firmly keep it between my finger and my thumb, and I'm just going to bring those wires over the bottom of the stone, and I'm going to keep looking to check whereabout they're coming up and check that it's central. Now I don't want my roots personally going too far up, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch it, I'll take my stone out, and I'm going to start to twist, and this twist here is going to be my tree trunk. Keep pushing my cabochon back in, and making sure that what's happening, as I say, this is probably the trickiest part because I'm trying to show you under the camera. What I want to make sure is when my stone is eventually in place, that these roots are gonna just slightly go over the bottom of them, or the bottom kind of lip of the stone. If I'm not happy, I just slightly untwist it and reshape it. So you might find it's easier to push it down against your surface, like your desk or whatever you're working on, just to kind of check that your roots are just covering the very bottom of the stone there. And then going to twist up to where I want my trunk to be. And if these need to be opened out a little bit more, then you can adjust them by just sliding them along. Now, you might find you want to kind of open it out a little bit more because you want to make sure that your stone, your cabochon, is eventually, held in place and secured. So just making sure it's enough to kind of cover the bottom, and I'll reposition that with my pliers a little bit later. Once you've got something which kind of looks like this, you're just going to then open out those wires to form your branches. So I like to take a few, maybe 3, and I'm going to take some from one side, some from another. I've got 4 on that side. I'm going to take another 3 there. You're just going to need to make sure that, you keep popping your cabochon back in, just to see placement wise where you want it to be. So these branches will splay out there, and you will find when you've twisted them, they've kind of got a natural side they want to kind of go on to. But trees are of course organic, and nothing really is always that symmetrical in nature, so you just do what you think looks nice. So keeping my cab just laying inside, just to have a little look at how that tree will kind of start to take shape, and then position out the wires into little groups, because now I'm going to form some branches which will start to splay off. So I tend to take them into groups of 3 or 4, depending on how many you've used. So it doesn't have to be too precise. I think that one wants to be over here. So I'll add that into that little section. And you can also put like a bend into your trunk as well. So you can see this one's kind of curving over. Camille says on YouTube now, as Facebook's frozen. My hands look like they're moving. I hope if need be on the replay it'll all kind of make sense and I'm not too frozen. It is a little bit blurry, I do appreciate that. There you go, a little bit of focus. So I'm going to take my stone out for this bit, and with my pliers, all my fingers, I'm going to add little twists. Now you don't want to be too firm with this because of course your wire is, quite thin, but I'm going to start to twist. So if I've took a group of 3 wires, I'm putting a little twist into them. And you can separate them out again, so then you can carry on maybe twisting 2 and then they can split off. So all I'm doing is I'm taking a little group of the wires, putting a little twist in it, and then I might take 2 out of that little group and continue to gently twist them together a few times. And then you can see all I'm doing now is starting to form little branches that splay off. I'll take these ones down a little bit further. Gentle little pinch, giving a couple of twists. So you can do this with your fingers, you can do it with your pliers, whatever you like. And as I say, they will naturally kind of lay where they want to. I'm going to twist 4 together here. So the more wire you twist together, the thicker your branches are going to be. You might want to try and, get them the same on both sides. You might do whatever you want to do with it. Again, take your time with this. I'm rushing because I appreciate I've got about 10 minutes left. And I want to get all the main points in. Hope I'm in shot. And you can twist the opposite way. You don't have to twist the same way. You can kind of twist around the branches if you want, so they twist around each other. Wherever you come from, you're over there. You can stay over there. And what's lovely about this is, if you follow this tutorial absolutely step by step, yours is still going to look completely different from mine. Everything's going to look unique and different because of the way we're twisting our branches and how many branches we're using and whatnot. So I do appreciate at the moment it doesn't look all that pretty and it doesn't look all that tree shaped. But if I keep placing that cab in, you'll see it's starting to form and take shape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to kind of lay my branches out where I want them to fit on. to my cabochon. And at this point I can untwist if I need to. I'm just going to keep positioning them. So I kind of gently bend it around the back of the stone just so I can see how it will look. I think I'm going to take one of those up and over, so I'm going to add extra twist into that. And I'll also be adding some more bends and things into this, into the roots and into the branches afterwards. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my tree and my cab, and I'm going to flip it over. You've got all these kind of bits of wires all over the place, so you do just keep needing to flip it. When I've got an idea of where I want that branch to sit, I'll make sure that my cabochon is pushed right down into the bottom of the roots. And I'm going to start to use the tail ends of the branches to secure around the frame. So I'll move them out the way for now. Don't worry, you can reposition them. So I'm going to take one at a time, really. And I'm just going to bend it so it can wrap around the frame at the back. I do apologise that my hands are slightly in the way, but I want to make sure I'm holding this firmly. So all you need to do is just bring it through and wrap around the frame. I'm also securing into that loop on the other side at this point, and I'm going to wrap about 3 times. For now, I'm just going to wrap 2, and I'm not going to cut any of the tail ends off. You can as you go if you want to, if it's easier, but I tend to find that I leave a little bit of the tail end and the length, because what I like to do is I like to add some bends into my branches at the end, so it helps to just have that little bit of additional wire, and then I will kind of trim it all and tuck it all in at the end when I'm happy with my positioning of everything. So as you go, the more you do this, the more it's going to start to keep your cabochon in place. So I'm taking the branch and wrapping it up through the frame, and I'm wrapping it 2 or 3 times for now. So you can use your tools to get yourself a little bit of purchase. I'm just creating little wraps. I keep flipping it back over, checking I'm happy whereabout things are going. And the way I do it is I do one on one side and one on the other side. So I tend to start off at the top of my tree, and then I can make sure my cab is in position. Move some of the branches out for now, but I've wrapped 2 on this side, so I'm gonna do 2 on this side. I'm going to slow down a little bit because I appreciate I am running over, but if that's okay, I might be an additional, say, 10 minutes or so. Jan says, this is a beautiful make, clear and concise tutorial. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I do appreciate I'm going really fast with it. Obviously, the longer you take on it, the more enjoyable it will be, and the better it's going to look. So just bringing the wire in and around and wrapping, and I can neaten all these wraps up later, but for now I just want to start getting everything in position. Keep checking the front, then flipping back over to the back. So take my next 2 branches where I want it to be. Obviously this is now 1 branch, and then this branch is formed by 3 wires. So I'm going to wrap those 3 underneath. To secure onto the frame. So I've wrapped 2 times, 3 times, and then again with the others. So I'm leaving all these little tail ends on for now. You can, as I say, cut them as you go if it's easier for you. I like to give myself that little length, so I'll just cut it at the end and I can check I'm happy where everything is. You do need to keep your cabochon in while you're doing this, because this is what is securing it in place. So if you do find, it slips, then you just keep repositioning it. The more you do and the more you go around, the more firm it will be and it won't come out. So now I've done those, I can move them up out the way and I can do the next branch on the other side. So again, look at where I want those branches to kind of splay out. This one is comprised of 4 wires. So I work from the top to the bottom, but you can do whatever you want. I do find it's easier to start at the top. Keep repositioning, keep checking. And this is what will take the longest probably to do. This is where you're forming your tree. So there's 2 different reasonings for this. It's creating the decorative element of your tree. It's also creating that security of your cabochon. So I'm pulling that wire so it's tight around the stone and tight around the frame at the back. And this is why we make the frame smaller than the cabochon, because when it's at the front, you won't see it at all. Again, move the wires that you're not using out the way for now. Slide it underneath, pulling it nice and taut. Now, if this was a pre-recorded tutorial, I'd go, and here's what it looks like when you get to this stage. And I did try and make a few sections up with the bale and things and attaching the branches from the root in advance. But at this point, I need to show you this. So I apologise if this is a little bit repetitive. You can see it's starting to form and take shape. It does come together fairly quickly. Just depends on how many of your branches that you've got. But I do like a fuller, thicker tree. And then I like to have those splay out separately. So I'll twist them a little and then they can go that way. So again, I tend to work side to side and just work my way down. I'll go and do some securing on the other side in a little bit. Just pulling it nice and tight. Gets easier as you go because it's all starting to form that shape now. You can see I'm not always using my tools, but if you feel you need that little bit of purchase, then that's what they're for. And the lovely thing about using the 0.4 or 26 gauge wire is it's nice and thin, so you can get that lovely detail in, but also it's easy enough to find a little gap to just push underneath the cabochon, between the cabochon and the frame. Okay, so I'm going to do some on this side. There's one there that's not been secured on from the last branch. So underneath, pull it nice and tight with my fingers or with my tools. You can also go back. So if you think, actually, I want this to come right over there instead, which I think I might do actually. Then you'll find you'll have a little bit of space, or you can just move along your wires. Just going to take two at the same time here, just to pull them underneath. That one I'd like to lay there. So it is constant flipping over, looking at the front, securing at the back, checking how it looks. I'm gonna weave this one into one of the loops. So sometimes what I do is I'll use the pliers to create a bend to get that wire in. But obviously, the more you bend it, it can become quite brittle and it can snap. But this is why when I start out and I'm measuring out how long I'm going to need each length of the 0.4 26 gauge wire to be, I am using at least 3 times the size of my stone, because I want to make sure I've got enough to bring in. I'm going to trim that one just now and tuck that in. Again, bringing it round in between. So you need to wrap each one round at least 2 times. For me, I think 3 is the magic number on anything. That's going to hold it always secure. So you'll notice when I start off a weave or I'm finishing a weave, I always wrap 3 times. So you're just going to go around and around and okay, I was going to just kind of show it off there, but I've got a lot of people saying I really would like to see it finished, so I will keep going with it if that's okay with you. It won't take me too much longer. Everyone's being very, very kind. DIY Dream Wedding says it's very relaxing to watch. And she says, or they say, I like seeing the transformation in real time. Okay, right. Well, if you're watching on a replay, feel free to skip a few minutes towards the end. If you're watching me live, then thank you for being patient with me. I'm often reluctant to do certain techniques on a live because I know, they're not always going to fit into the allocated time that we've got. But this has been something that I think a lot of people have asked me. I think it was Christine who asked me at first if I would do more wire wrapping on a cab. And I thought, well, we've done tree lives are always popular. If you're somebody who sells your makes, then they are a good craft fair or artisan market seller, I think. You can wrap over and come under as well if you want. I generally prefer to bring the wire under the frame, but it doesn't really matter as long as it's secure. But I just look at the gold against that blue. It's so pretty. So I'm gonna position this out. You can see now already my stone is becoming a lot more secure. I'm probably just over halfway round now with my wires of my branches. Would have liked them to be twisted a little bit, but we'll tweak it at the end. So yeah, it's a bit fiddly at first when you're first trying to get that first the first branches on. Your cab's going to move, it's going to slip out of place. But just keep repositioning, and the more you go, the easier it's going to get. So you can see there's a little bit of a loop. I'm pulling it nice and taut. I want that wire to be tight around. Reposition if need be. Back to the other side. Yeah, I agree with that, Judith. Judith says it's looking beautiful. Definitely a longer project, but it takes what it takes. I mean, you say it's a longer project. And, I often do some very simple like bead stringing and, lots of different techniques. But, you could be doing a stitch beading project and that can take hours. So it just always depends on how intricate it is you want to make it. And obviously, if I don't have that thick of a tree trunk and not as many branches, then it won't take as long. In regards to weaving your bale, with anything, you get quicker the more practice you have with something. So if you're starting out, I would say, go slow with it and make sure it's lovely and neat. But I find I can wire weave quite quickly now, depending on the weave that I'm doing. If it's a weave I've well practiced, then I can go at quite a quick pace. And that's also possibly, why we often struggle to cost our pieces if we are selling, because it is important that you add your time in. So quite often people will say it's 4 times the cost of your materials. Other people work as your materials plus an hourly rate. But obviously, if it's something that you're first starting out at, you're going to take a lot longer than somebody who might be, a master at that skill. So you wouldn't necessarily charge more because it takes you longer than somebody who's a lot more advanced. But what you can do is you can set yourself an hourly rate, and you could say, okay, I might charge myself a minimum wage when I'm first starting out, and then as I get more practiced, I'm more accomplished, I might want to increase my hourly rate. So then it might take you a lot less time, but you're still valuing your time. So I've not got many more to do. I'm going to place that one here, I think. So I tend to bring my wires in the same direction. I was almost going to take that over the top rather than underneath. I don't think it matters, but I do like them going in the same direction. It's just easier when I come to finish it off. So you can see how it's looking at the back. Tracy says, I've never done a tree of life, but I think I'll have a go. You've inspired me to try because you make it look easier than I thought. Thanks, Natalie. You're welcome. It is easy. It is easy. And what's lovely, as I said before, Tracy, is everyone's is going to look different because everyone's going to twist their branches differently and, put their own take on it. And just bear in mind, if I've got the most beautiful tree in my garden, I've got a big sycamore, its branches are not uniform. If I look outside at nature, some of them are twisted and gnarled and aged, and that's what's lovely about it. Every tree is unique, and every tree of life pendant will also be unique. So I'm up to my last branch. Underneath, tightly pulling it round to secure, and I'm going to wrap it round the frame about 3 times. And you will see now that with all the shakes in the world, my cabochon is held in place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pliers, and what I want to be careful of is that I'm not going to chip or dent or hurt my gorgeous cab. So very gently and lightly, I'm just going to start twisting. Now I twist the roots a little bit at the bottom when I'm first securing them on. I do find by the time I've twisted the wire a little bit more, all I'm doing, if you can see, I'm taking the tip of my pliers and I'm just putting little bends in it, taking a couple at a time, and that's going to start to create what I think is more natural looking roots. If I need to, I can condense my trunk, I can put bends and curves in it. And then the reason why I keep my wires on to begin with is I want to just add a little bit more life into my branches. So again, I'm just taking the side of my pliers here. I'm not touching the stone. I'm just gently catching the wire, and I'm just putting little bends and little twists in it. Now, as I do that, it's going to tighten up the wire a little bit more. And that's why I've kept that little extra bit at the end, because if it does pull from more of the wire at the back, it's not going to strain it too much, if that makes sense. So all I'm doing is just shaping it how I want it to be. If I want to compress the wires a little bit more, so you can see here it's kind of untwisted, I can just add that into it. I can separate them out a little bit more. So again, just laying it gently at the side. You can do this with any pliers, chain nose, whatever you want. Do love my tweezer nose. If you've got bent nose, they're often good as well, because you can see I've got those little pincers at the top, so I can really kind of bend that as I want. Bending it slightly different directions, splaying those branches out. I think it just adds a little bit more life to my tree. My tree of life has got more life in it. looks a bit more weathered. Again, just be really careful you're not scratching or scraping your stone here. Some are more hardy than others, depending on where they are on the Mohs scale. And then just have a little look and check you're happy with what you've got and how it looks. And if you are, we can then start to sort the back out. Tina says, well, you cut some of the wire, or will you use it all? No, I mean, you could bring it back over if you wanted. You could add chips onto these as well if you want. But what I'll do now is I will just start to trim. So what I want to make sure that when I'm cutting my wires off, that it's all nice and smooth. So you can cut it on the inside or you can cut them on the outside. If you've wrapped it round 3 times, so again, you can wrap it round once more if you wanted to. I find it's easier to kind of cut them at the end and make sure that, you know, I've not missed one. So I'm just going to cut it nice and close and then make sure I've tucked it in. So what I mean by tucking it in is, I'm going to wrap that once round again. I'm going to take the end of my wire, could only wrap that round once. The wire is now nice and secure. I kind of want when I'm wrapping as well that the wraps sitting next to each other and not overlap. If they start to overlap, it can get a little bit bulky at the back. But I'm trimming really, really close and then I'm tucking in. What I need to make sure is that there's no scratchy parts. So if I'm cutting on the inside of the frame, that won't sit against the skin or your clothes. But I'll always just gently run my finger over it because I need to make sure that wherever I'm cutting the wire, I'm tucking it right into that frame. Rub my finger over it gently because I don't want it to, as I say, snag on anything. I don't want to, you know, jewellery is meant to be worn. So we need to make sure that it's nice and safe. And also, if those ends are fully tucked down and secured, it's not going to unravel either. So I always like to remind myself that anything that is made by hand can be undone or destroyed or broken by hand as well. So, you know, if you wanted to pull this apart, you could do. You probably need wire cutters. So I want to make sure that when it's being worn, you know, it's as safe and secure as it can possibly be. So if I'm wearing it or someone else is wearing it, that they enjoy it and it lasts. So I'm cutting my wire nice and close. I'm just cutting the tail ends. I'm not cutting into my frame or anything like that. So if I want to wrap round again, I can do. Nice and taut and nice and tight, in close with the cutters, tucking the tail end in. So I tend to just rotate around the wire with it. So see if I'm cutting here, which is on the outside of the frame, tiny little tail there, and I'm curving around with it. Sounded really scouse then, didn't I? Curving around with it. And that tightens it too. What I would say is my top tip is, if you, like me, I've got the same brand of pliers and I adore these. Not sponsored by them, but I absolutely love them. But both of the handles are blue. And what I will find is if I'm so engrossed in something, I might reach for the wrong one. So if I was coming in with, say, looking for me Tweezernose to just tweak on my branches, make sure you're picking up the right tool and you're not picking up your cutters, because that can be very sad when you've put in a lot of effort. I do my branches one by one. If you go round and you do, cut a few at a time, there's a good chance you can miss tucking one in. So I do definitely recommend just do one at a time. It won't take you long. Trim, turn. Also, I might suggest, if you're not wearing safety goggles while you're working, then make sure you are holding on to the tail ends of that wire when you are cutting it off, because you don't want them to fire off and to get you in the eye. So I'm just going to pull that one, because it needs to be a little bit tighter. Trimming close, tucking round. And if you feel that it is, it needs to be a little bit tighter, you've got that length there on your wires to cut that extra, to wrap it over that extra time. So I'm just getting purchase around the wire on the frame. I'm not putting my pliers over the front of the cab, just on the back. So you can see it's looking fairly neat. Again, keep rubbing your finger over. A few more wires to go. I'm going to do these at the same time, just to speed up. But I'm making sure I'm wrapping and tucking each little end in as close as I can get it. And the last few, so you can see in terms of the lengths of the wire, I took 20 centimetres, and I've only got maybe a few centimetres left over on each branch, so I think I've measured that fairly well. You're going to need, just to recap, enough of the 0.8 millimetre or 20 gauge wire to make a frame slightly smaller than the cab that you're using. You're going to need extra for your bail, and then you're going to need, I would say, for your branches, about 3 times the length of cabochon that you are using. So, last run round of my finger to check that it's all secured in place. I've got every single wire and branch cut off and tucked down firmly to the frame, and my cabochon is done. I've gone about 25 minutes over what I should, but I've got loads of you still watching, so thank you so much. And my camera's played ball today, hasn't it? Again, if you need to straighten anything up, you can do. You can still tweak those branches if you want. Lots of lovely gemstones available on the website. Lots of colour wire bundles as well. So you get the pack with the 0.8 and the 0.4 millimetre wire. And that is everything you need to make your Tree of Life pendant. You might just want to add a chain into your purchase. Though I have made a chain myself, so you can see here with the copper, I made my own jump rings and I made a little chain to go through it. All you would need to do is make sure that your bail, when you're forming your bail, is wide enough to fit whatever your chain you want in, whether that be cord or whatever. Jan says beautiful, thank you so much. Mel says thank you, it's lovely. DIY, happy weekend everyone. Oh yeah, it's Friday, isn't it? I forgot it was Friday. Camille's asking for a heart or a thumbs up for the live for me, thank you so much. Debbie says, thanks, Natalie. So many hints and tips. If there is anything that I have missed that you want to ask me a question, if you go onto YouTube and you go onto Natalie Pattern Jewellery, that is my YouTube. Obviously, this is Totally Beads, but I'll get notified if you've got a question. Otherwise, I go back onto the Totally Beads video of it, and I will double check in case I've missed anything. But if you message me on Natalie Patton Jewellery, that's my name there, jewellery spelled the English way of spelling it, I will get a notification, so I'll be able to respond to you as soon as possible. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to have a little scroll up, but I can't see any questions. You're all being very, very complimentary though, so thank you so much for that. Thank you for being with me today. I'm going to be back with you on Monday as always. I can't remember what I'm making. I can't remember what. Oh no, Monday's bank holiday, isn't it? That's why I can't remember. I won't be back with you on Monday. It's a bank holiday in the UK, so I apologise that I won't be here with you then, but I will be back with you on Friday, and I'm making some gemstone chainmail bracelets, I think, with you on Friday. They're going to be lovely. So if you would like to come and watch me then, it's 10 a.m. UK time on Totally Beads. I'm on Facebook sometimes, YouTube sometimes. Have a lovely weekend, everybody.